I'm a 29-year-old man married to my wife 30. We have 2 kids, a 5-year-old son and a 3-year-old son. My wife works a full-time office job while I work from home with extremely flexible hours. As long as I meet my deadlines, it doesn't matter when or how I get my work done, aside from a few Zoom meetings. My sister, Barb, 26, and her husband, Matthew, 30, live nearby and both work full-time jobs. They have a 5-year-old daughter, Jessica. Since I have a more flexible schedule, it was agreed that I'd drop off and pick up Jessica from daycare along with my kids. Most days, I'd bring her back to my house, make snacks or dinner for the kids, and Barb would pick her up in the evening. I didn't mind and thought it was good for my kids to spend time with their cousin. Jessica is a sweet and usually well-behaved child, and I've always thought of myself as her cool uncle. A few days ago, while I was preparing snacks, my 5-year-old son and Jessica started yelling at each other. My son shouted, "My dad's not a girl," while Jessica yelled back, "He is. That's like a girl." I was stunned. I turned off the TV and calmly sat Jessica down to explain that the word she used was very bad and hurtful. I told her we don't call people names like that and asked her to apologize because it wasn't okay to be mean. She resisted, saying, "That's what my dad called you, and he's not in trouble." At that moment, I realized this wasn't an isolated incident, but something Jessica had picked up from her parents, specifically Matthew. After much coaxing, Jessica did apologize, and we talked more. I tried explaining that men and women can have all kinds of roles, working in offices, working from home, or caring for kids, and that none of these make someone less of a man or less of a woman. Later that evening, I told my wife what happened. She was furious and agreed that I should demand an apology from both Barb and Matthew. When I called Barb, she brushed it off, saying it was just a word and that I was blowing it out of proportion. She dismissed my concerns, saying, "That's just how Matthew is." I told her that wasn't acceptable and out of frustration said she'd need to start arranging her own childcare. The next morning, Barb didn't call or text, but when it was time to pick up Jessica, she began frantically reaching out. I ignored her calls for a while, finally answering around noon. She was furious, saying I was irresponsible and had made her late for work. I calmly reminded her that I told her I wasn't picking up Jessica anymore until I got an apology. She continued yelling, so I hung up. That afternoon, Jessica was expecting me to pick her up at daycare, and it broke my heart to leave her there. She's only 5 and doesn't understand why she can't come over anymore. I explained gently that her mom and I were having a disagreement but hoped it would be resolved soon. Barb later roped in our mom, who was disabled, to pick up Jessica. Mom called me, asking why I was being mean. I explained the situation, expecting her support, but she also said, "You know how Matthew is," as if that excused his behavior. I told her I was tired of everyone enabling Matthew's disrespect and refused to back down without an apology. Then Matthew called me. I answered, thinking maybe he was ready to apologize. But instead, he accused me of causing Barb great distress and said I was being petty. I told him I didn't appreciate him talking badly about me to his daughter, especially since I care for her daily. He dismissed it as a joke, saying I was overreacting and called me the same slur Jessica had used. That was the final straw. I told him off and hung up. Barb continued texting, accusing me of being cruel to her and our mom. I replied that unless her next message was an apology, I'd block her. She doubled down instead, so I blocked her number. Now my mom is still picking up Jessica, but it's tough on her due to her disability. Jessica has been telling me she misses coming over and doesn't enjoy staying with Grandma. It's breaking my heart, but I feel that letting this go without an apology would only reinforce the idea that my boundaries don't matter. At the same time, I don't want Jessica to suffer because of this. She's a good kid and isn't to blame for her parents' behavior. I've made sure to let her know I love her and that none of this is her fault. First of all, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. The advice and support were genuinely overwhelming, and it gave me a lot to think about. Here's what's happened since. A few clarifications for context. My dad passed away 2 years ago from a heart attack, which wasn't unexpected due to his unhealthy lifestyle. He was a great dad and grandpa right up to the end. His passing left my mom alone, and she doesn't work. She has MS, which is mostly steady but worsens under stress, often leaving her less mobile after flare-ups. My mom gets by thanks to life insurance and some financial support from me and my wife. We cover the costs of a caretaker who helps her with cooking, cleaning, and shopping a few times a week, as she can't afford it on her own. While Barb and Matthew have a bigger house and fancier cars, their finances are stretched due to loans and a large mortgage, which is why I've been so involved in helping with Jessica. After reading all your comments, I realized I needed to stand my ground without giving up on Jessica. She's like a third child to me, and my kids adore her. Punishing her for her parents' behavior didn't sit right with me, so I decided to try a different approach. I unblocked my sister because if I'm going to take care of her daughter, she needs a way to contact me. Then, I had a long talk with my mom. I explained how hurtful it was that she immediately sided with Barb and Matthew instead of supporting me. I used the rocking the boat analogy someone had shared, and it seemed to resonate. I also pointed out that her taking over Jessica's care undermined my ability to demand accountability. To my surprise, she'd apologized. She admitted she'd gone about things the wrong way and promised to avoid getting caught in the middle going forward. A new approach. I texted Barb and told her we needed to talk. I also let her know I'd be dropping Jessica off at their place that evening. When I picked Jessica up from daycare, she was thrilled. She stuck by my side all afternoon, which broke my heart a little. I reassured her that she wasn't in trouble and that I wasn't mad at her. I explained that I try not to miss picking her up anymore, which made her happy. Later that evening, after Jessica went to bed, I sat down with Barb and Matthew. I made it clear that this was a serious conversation, and if they interrupted or dismissed me, I'd walk out and stop helping with Jessica entirely. Here's what I laid out. No more morning drop-offs, at least for the time being. Matthew's behavior needed to have lasting consequences. No more funding family outings or vacations. I reminded them that if it's a man's job to provide, they're on their own for those expenses, except when it comes to Jessica. She'll always be welcome. No more disrespect behind my back. If I hear about them talking trash about me again, I'll start charging for childcare. I also made it clear that I was a man with pride and that being disrespected, especially by my own family, was unacceptable. Matthew was furious and had to step outside with Barb to cool down. Eventually, they came back and gave me a half-hearted apology. It wasn't perfect, but I didn't want to push too hard and risk losing my connection with Jessica. For now, I've got what I wanted: a semblance of respect, some accountability, and the ability to keep caring for my niece without compromising my boundaries. I still plan to have a one-on-one talk with Barb about her relationship with Matthew and how she views me, but I want to let things settle first. I know this isn't the resolution some of you wanted. However, I needed a solution I could live with. For me. Story 2. My wife and I have been married for 20 years, and we have an 18-year-old daughter who graduated high school a few months ago. Around 6 years ago, I discovered my wife was having an affair. It lasted a couple of months, and at the time, I was ready to divorce her. However, my wife was deeply remorseful. She quit her job, started therapy, and promised to take every reconciliation step I asked for. For the sake of our family, I decided to stay. And for the next 5 years, things were genuinely good. We had date nights, romantic vacations, and it felt like we truly loved each other again. But during the 6th year, I found myself revisiting her betrayal. I couldn't shake the memories, and they started to weigh heavily on me. My sister and I talked about it, and she said something that struck a chord. Would you really want to spend your life with someone who betrayed you so badly? That line stayed with me. It wasn't just her words. It was a culmination of doubts I'd been harboring for a while. After a lot of reflection, I finally decided I couldn't do it anymore. The timing and the fallout. A day before my daughter's graduation, I told my wife I was filing for divorce. She was devastated and cried a lot, begging me to reconsider, but I told her my decision was final. The graduation itself was wonderful. I was incredibly proud of my daughter, and despite everything, my wife managed to put on a brave face. However, my daughter could sense something was wrong and asked me why her mom seemed sad. I told her to enjoy her big day and not to worry about it. The next day, I sat my daughter down and told her about the divorce. She was shocked and upset, especially since it had clearly affected her mom during graduation. She accused me of ruining her mom's special day, but I told her it wasn't her concern and reassured her that both her mom and I would always love her. To address some of the questions and concerns from others. I admit the timing wasn't ideal. I didn't want to overshadow my daughter's graduation, but I also didn't want to wait any longer once I'd made my decision. Telling my wife lifted a huge weight off my shoulders and allowed me to enjoy the day fully. However, I regret how it affected my daughter. My sister's words weren't the sole reason. I had been dwelling on this for a year, questioning whether I could truly move past the betrayal. Her comment simply helped me realize that I deserved to prioritize my own happiness and that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with someone I could trust completely. No, this wasn't about a midlife crisis or another relationship. I'm not interested in dating for the foreseeable future. My focus is on healing and rebuilding my life. My daughter is now in college, but the situation has strained our relationship. She recently told me she came across my online posts and read my comments. She asked how I could be so cruel to her mom and has decided to go low contact with me for now. This hasn't been easy for anyone, and I understand my daughter's feelings. I've told her I'll always be here for her and that I respect her decision to take some space. As for my wife, we're going through divorce proceedings and she continues to express her sadness about the situation. I don't regret my decision to leave, but I do wish the timing had been better. Life isn't perfect, and sometimes we have to make hard choices that don't align with the ideal timeline. For now, I'm focusing on myself and supporting my family as best I can from a distance. Thank you for all your comments and support.